What's up guys, Anton here at DPR. It's hatching season and I wanted to show you a little bit of the scenarios that could go either very well or very wrong when you breed ball pythons. If you're ready, let's jump right into that. So basically after incubation, when it comes the time to open the eggs or have the babies pip on their own, there's a lot of different thoughts, a lot of different methods. I think every breeder has their own little, signature to this. Usually incubation is anywhere between 56 to 61 days. For ball pythons, temperature will range between 88 to 90 something, about that range in Fahrenheit. Some people will incubate a little bit on the lower temperature. That's something that I do. I like to incubate a little lower. If you go a little too high, you can have some clutches that will be prone to some kinks or shark mounts or any other issues that you can run into. You really want to incubate in the lower temperature to avoid any of those things. But that being said, either cutting or letting pip, I think both ways are fine. There's pros and cons to both ways. I think that for an inexperienced breeder, I would say just letting them pip is probably the most rewarding and satisfying thing. I know we're excited, we wait for so long, to get your animals to size, and then you get your clutch and you do everything. It is such a long process. So when you have the eggs and they are ready to cut, I understand, but realistically, in the grand scheme of things, waiting 2-3 more days is just nothing. And it is so rewarding when you actually have a baby that comes out of the egg and pips. This is what I would suggest. And then, obviously you can cut, but I would never cut under 56 days. I know some people that do get really eager and cut before that. It can be fine, but really it's stressful for the animal. Create just an open area for bacteria or flies to lay in, or it just can be a mess. So either you pip or you cut, both ways you'll end up with something pretty similar to this. The way we actually do it is that we let one of our babies pip, and then after the first pip we will cut the whole clutch. So that way we know that after having one animal pip from the clutch, they're pretty much ready to go. Sometimes some babies will be a little bit running on a late schedule than the others, but most of the time, they're good on their own. So we did cut this clutch this morning. We had this animal here, and I think this one here as well, that started pipping. And, just a couple hours later, this baby already came out. Sometimes, obviously, you want everything to be absorbed, but sometimes a little bit of a leftover from, the egg sac will be left. This is not something to worry about. It happens very frequently. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not there. Usually either it's absorbed or it will be left somewhere in the vermiculite. And even if it's full of vermiculite like this, it really never causes any problem whatsoever. So this is the first baby. So what we'll do, basically, we'll remove the egg just so we don't create an environment, because there's still some juices in there. We'll remove the egg so we don't create an environment where flies can actually come in. And you'll see in this clutch, there's basically babies at different stages. Obviously, this one is probably the most ready to go. There's no more veins anywhere in the egg. Probably the reason why this baby is still in there is because he's still absorbing the leftover of the egg sac. And some of the other eggs, let's check, like this one here, for example. This one still has a little bit of vein, but these will probably be all gone by tomorrow or the day after. And that's basically what we do. And you see that in one clutch, you have a variety of, even though they were all from the same clutch laid at the same time, put in the incubator at the same time, the same temperature, some will develop faster than others, just different metabolism, and it's part of it. So that's our method. One pip, we cut everything, and then we can basically take a look at everything. If ever you decide to cut, one of the main arguments for cutting is that you can basically intervene if there's any problem within the baby inside of the egg. So let's say like a twisted umbilical cord, you can untwist that. It really doesn't happen often, maybe like one every 400 or 500 eggs. It really doesn't happen very often, but you can intervene by cutting, and you'll see if something is wrong. But most of the time, if the baby doesn't pip and doesn't come out, it's because it's not viable. But if you do this method, just cutting when the baby pip, you ensure that you have a very clean cut, not full of blood, and it's not a very big mess, and your babies are going to come out very quickly. So that's the method we do. This is a clutch that we had pipping this morning, and I'll show you one that did pip last week, a little bit of where they are now. So this is a Dreamsicle clutch. So basically all the babies came out of the egg, we removed the egg, and now we will leave them in there with the vermiculite inside of this bin until they all shed, and then they will be placed separately in our rack. So basically, Dreamsicle clutch, this is pretty cool. This is my first time hatching Dreamsicle at NBK Reptiles. This is one of Brand's clutch. So Dreamsicle, we have 2 pastel Dreamsicles and a pastel pied 100% het for lavender. These are all females, but we had a 5th egg inside of this clutch, and that one is a little bit more complicated. So let's check this one out. So the 5th baby of that clutch, when we did cut the egg, we noticed that the egg sac was really big. And sometimes you'll see, like, if you just see the snake and you don't really see the egg sac, everything's okay. Sometimes you'll see like the egg sac is kind of on the side and the baby seems really squished with it. So like by hatching a lot of snakes, you'll get to have an eye on, this one doesn't look that right. So things happen sometimes, and this baby is basically one example of that. Why is this snake inside of this bin right here? Basically, we did cut that clutch 5 days ago and all the babies came out, everything was right. This baby was remaining still in the egg, and he was not able to absorb the egg sac. Actually, I'm going to show you what's left of the egg. It is pretty graphic, so if anyone's eating like a good steak or something right now, maybe fast forward or just chew and swallow your bite or whatnot. But this basically is what was left in the egg this morning. So the baby came out and didn't really absorb the rest of the egg sac. It is pretty gnarly, pretty disgusting, but it's part of it. So the baby did not absorb the egg sac. Is this a big problem? Not necessarily. Obviously, the egg sac is a lot of nutrients, a lot of elements for getting them energy after the first shed and getting them ready for the first meal. We put it in there just because we want this to scar up and not to have any problem with vermiculite going in or anything getting stuck. These animals are a little bit weaker, but we will keep them in the incubator like that. Just a wet Scott towel, and that we will change daily just to avoid any infections or whatnot until that scar is completely closed, and then we'll put it back with the other babies. And we'll make sure that sometimes these babies that have that problem happening, sometimes they will not shed right away, they will skip the first shed. You want to offer food before the first shed just to make sure that this baby is good to go. Just take a closer eye on them, but they do end up doing very well most of the time. So the scenario I just showed you guys, it's not something that happens very often, but it happens from time to time. From last year, this is an example of an animal that actually had that happening. This is a super orange dream yellow belly scrambler that we hatched, and this animal basically had the same thing. He did not absorb his egg sac, and we can still see he has a little bit of a tiny scar. If we go like right here, you see that the scales are a little bit bigger as far as the scar, but other than that, that's the only thing that we can see from this snake, that he did not absorb the egg sac. Same as I said before, this one did not shed right away. He did eat before the first shed though, which took about a month to happen. And then he was good to go. And just, you want to take a closer eye to this, but if you have a baby that's not coming out of the egg right away, you can take a closer look at that. Or if you want, you can either move that egg into a separate bin into the incubator, just to make sure that no other babies will go into that egg and try to, hide in it. This is something that happens often. You'll have, the babies are coming out, and sometimes one will crawl back inside of the egg of another baby that didn't come out yet. And just because you don't want to overstress your snakes, maybe doing that is something that can help. But realistically speaking, it is more than okay for a snake not to absorb the egg sac. You just want to have a closer look at it. I hope this video was helpful, guys. I know it can be very stressful when you start breeding ball pythons and you have your first eggs. There's so many little details, so many little variables, things that can happen, and it just happens. It's part of it, it's part of the experience. Our motto is kind of the no stress, things happens, and it's just part of it all. But it's normal to have many questions when it comes to, our first eggs is a very stressful process. everything should be more than fine. It's very rare that something bad happens. Be sure to follow us on YouTube for more tips. If ever we have some struggle that we happen to see during the year, obviously we'll try to do a YouTube video. We try to share our journey along the way, and be sure to follow us on Instagram for daily snake content and look at our available animals on Morph Market on this. Cheers.